Hey y'all, Tony here. You've probably seen this article today. I talked to the analyst on the phone today, and I need y'all to check my work because between this analyst at Roth MKM and Tony Denaro, one of us is going to be massively incorrect on AMC's cash position at the end of Q2. Let's go through this article and go through my math, look at my model versus his model, and you guys decide who is going to be correct here in a couple weeks when AMC reports their cash position on the Q2 balance sheet. All right, guys, let's go through this article, which you can find on Interactive Brokers. It is quoting Street Insider as the source. That's behind a $150 a month paywall. I don't have a subscription to Street Insider, but let's talk here about what the analyst got correct in my view and what the big mistake is. And then I'll talk about the phone call that I had with the gentleman this afternoon. We got news today that the analyst over at Roth MKM updated and upgraded his forecast on AMC based on the unexpected good performance of Inside Out 2 in the second quarter, now increasing his forecast for revenue to $1.012 billion and adjusting up the EBITDA to a positive $7 million for the second quarter. You guys have seen my spreadsheet model before. I use this every quarter to do forecasts on AMC, and his revenue forecast is in line with my estimates. I have a range of $995 million up to $1.13 billion, with my target number coming in at $1.06 billion. So his forecast for revenue, $1.01 billion, I think is a very reasonable forecast. If we go over to Yahoo Finance and look at a summary of 7 different analysts, they have a range on revenue of $945 million on the low side to $1.09 billion on the high side. The summary of revenue estimates from those 7 analysts match very closely with the results that my spreadsheet is giving, $995 to $1.13 billion. The problem that I have with this forecast report, and this hit the press today for a lot of people to see, is that Roth MKM is estimating that AMC will end Q2 with $335 million of cash on the balance sheet. He goes on to say that his Q2 free cash flow burn is estimated at $250 million. Now let's see how those numbers stack up to what I have modeled out. Just to be fair and make sure I was being as absolutely realistic as possible, I made some adjustments to the spreadsheet relative to the amount of money spent on OPEX. So there is a slight increase here. The result of that means that the forecasted net loss for the quarter in my spreadsheet got a little bit worse, but this is not going to affect the cash flow, the net cash flow, or the free cash flow anywhere close to what this analyst told us in his report, with AMC ending Q2 with only $335 million on the balance sheet. We all know that AMC ended Q1 with $660 million of cash and restricted cash on the balance sheet. I don't think that is in dispute by anybody. So when we look at these 3 scenarios, we're looking at what is the free cash flow and what is the net cash flow for the quarter. And that result for free cash flow and net cash flow is going to come down to what was your assumption on revenue and net income. We have 3 scenarios here for net income. What were your assumptions about depreciation and what were your assumptions about CapEx? And then importantly, you can't neglect the fact that AMC raised $250 million in Q2 with the 8K released on May 15th, saying that as of May 13th, the company had raised $250 million. I have subtracted out here the 2.5% sales agent fee. So let's just call it $243 million financing cash flow coming in to AMC's balance sheet in Q2. So the analyst over at Roth MKM wants to tell us that AMC burned free cash flow $250 million in Q2. My numbers here are a little bit more optimistic, 189 in the best case, $235 million free cash flow burn in the worst case. I'm not going to quibble with him 235 or 250. He might have had a different assumption about depreciation or CapEx that would slightly sway his number. Doesn't really matter, doesn't make a whole lot of difference. What does make a difference is what is your net cash flow, because that is going to determine how much cash is left on the balance sheet at the end of the quarter. Now, the gentleman is telling us that AMC is going to end the quarter with $335 million on the balance sheet. We know that we ended last quarter with $660 million. That means somehow he's predicting that the company is going to spend $325 million. I'm not quite sure how he's bridging the gap from his free cash flow burn of $250 to $325 million. But to tell us in this article that AMC is going to end Q2 with $335 million cash on the balance sheet, you would also have to completely ignore the fact that the company raised $250 million with a ATM that completed on May 13th. On my model, I have that financing cash flow added in, and in all scenarios that I have modeled here, the net result is a positive cash flow, a positive net cash flow for AMC in Q2, meaning we will not end with less than $660 million on the balance sheet. In fact, I expect to see a slight increase in the cash on the balance sheet, between $8 and $53 million. Even if my assumptions on CapEx were a little bit off, it's not going to materially change that number. We're going to end the quarter somewhere around $660 million on the balance sheet by every number that I can crunch. So my question for the gentleman was, did you count in your model the cash raise that AMC did in May? And I called him this afternoon and I asked him that very question. And I read the article to him. I said, did they make a misstatement on your model, on your expectations, on your forecast? And he reluctantly took my phone call and he reluctantly answered my questions. And thank you, Eric, for answering my questions and taking a minute out of your day. But I want to know, where are you coming up with this extra $300 million of spend, where all of a sudden AMC's cash on the balance sheet is going to be reduced to $335 million. He did tell me unequivocally that the article was correct, that his model did include the ATM cash raise of $250 million, and that yes, he expects AMC to end the quarter with only $335 million on the balance sheet. Those were his exact words to me this afternoon in the phone call. Where is that extra expense coming from? If I'm wrong, guys, if you're sitting out there, you're a CPA, you're an accountant, you're an investment banker, you're an analyst, tell me what I got wrong on here. Or does the analyst over at Roth MKM owe everybody an update to his model and a correction to the press release that went out to all of his clients and to mainstream media? I am human. I could have made a mistake. We all make mistakes, but we're talking a $300 million difference here, and that is important to both investors and institutions and the media that is looking at this analyst forecast. And I would like some clarification from the analyst over there at Roth MKM. Guys, leave me your comments or questions down below. I am Tony Denaro, and I will see ya on the next video.